Thank you, Chris and Heather. As you can see, I actually get the easy part here compared to all of the balls that they are juggling. So just to focus more specifically on the industry-based certifications and their incorporation into the accountability system, House Bill 2804, allows this to actually be part of the accountability system. In fact, it requires it to be. And when we talk about an industry-based certification, there is a pretty clear definition of what that means, and that is, forgive me for reading, an industry-validated credential that complies with knowledge and skills standards promulgated by a nationally or nationally recognized business, industry, professional, or government entity representing a particular profession or occupation that is issued by or endorsed by a national or international business, industry, or professional organization, a state agency or other government entity, or a state-based industry association. So just to unpack that a little bit, I think what this is getting at is that there are a lot of certifications that are available and a lot of certifications that students earn. Many of those are stepping stones in some ways, right? They are skill-building certifications that allow them to become more marketable when they actually add other certifications or skills to them. And then there are the kind of endpoint certifications, which is really what the focus of this particular piece will be. So one of the questions was, are these only seniors? Are these only specific students that are going to be looking? It really is, at least the decision making right now, and Chris is right, it's not all set in stone, but the thinking right now is that it really will depend on the certification itself. So less on what the student's grade is, but more so on, has a student been participating in a post-secondary or industry-based program that is resulting in an endpoint certification that would lead to some level of employability and a higher than average minimum wage employment opportunity. So that is, again, none of this has been set in stone, so I'm not here to tell you the definition. That is actually part of the process that we're going to be going through over the next 8 to 10 months to figure out. But I did want to at least touch upon this because there are a lot of certifications. Many of them are extremely valuable, but they don't in and of themselves lead to a higher wage employment offer or opportunity, or they are simply building a more broad set of skills. So I'll focus on the process, and I will underline draft timeline. But this is what we have. This is what we are working against over the next few months. So as Chris and Heather noted, we did release to the administrator address asking for any industry-based certifications that meet that definition to be forwarded to us via, I think it's just a template and an online upload tool. As Chris noted, you don't have to do this if you already include all of your certifications in the PER list. We're not trying to create extra work or duplicate work. It's just, in this instance, it will be extremely important that we have a comprehensive list because that will inform when your PEAMS coordinator, for example, actually has to report the industry certifications that students earned. That needs to be available from the list. So that's why it's so important that we went beyond the PER and wanted to make sure that we are capturing all of the certifications that are being offered. So in order to create that, so we're collecting that. The deadline is 10/21. And once we have that particular piece closed, we will marry that list with the PERS list so that we have this more comprehensive list. And then we'll be drafting drafting a rules framework. And this is basically what I think people are going to be very interested in. These are the criteria for which an industry-based certification would be eligible for use. A lot of this, again, this is not something that I have in my back pocket. It's not something that any one person does. It's going to be really the culmination of conversations with industry, with K-12, with higher ed. But we will post a draft rules framework in January, along with that initial list. And that initial list, I will say, will not be the comprehensive one that we've collected because, for example, I've seen some of the things that are already included on the Perkins list, some of the things that we've been getting as part of the submissions, and for example, you know, I'm not picking on any one certification, but you know, CPR, things like that. That is not an industry-based certification that can lead to higher wage employment. It is definitely a skill. Lifeguards have to know how to do it, and hopefully we all do. But there is going to be this differentiation based upon kind of what industry is looking for, what the market is demanding, and what actually leads to employment opportunities and fills some of those regional and statewide job opportunities. So we will post that. It'll be, you know, slightly abbreviated based on taking out some of the things that I think we all know would not make the cut. And in January, this will be posted along with the rules framework for public comment. Okay, so it'll go out for the 90 days of public comment. That will give all sorts of stakeholders the opportunity to weigh in on what is there, what they feel like is missing, their views and comments and feedback on the actual rules framework. So this is going to be an opportunity for folks to weigh in and provide feedback. During that time period, our initial plan is to also host some regional meetings so that we can bring together K-12, industry, and post-secondary in these conversations because, again, this is not just a one audience kind of decision. This is really trying to come together and figure out what are the right, at least for year one, to what are the right or as right as we can get for year one, you know, list of certifications moving forward. We hope to conclude that in April. It may extend beyond that. But then beyond that, we will compile all of the feedback that we've gotten, analyze all of the kind of suggestions and additional information that we gather through those meetings, and we'll update and propose a recommendation to the Commissioner for the rules and the initial list of certification based on those rules. I'll stop here because one thing I would say, sorry, I apologize, I'm a wanderer by nature, so one thing I will say, and I said this yesterday, I do want to emphasize it again, this is an opportunity and it's something that will be reviewed annually. I know that probably creates a headache for you guys, perhaps, but you know, as we noted, these things change. Industry certifications are not a static piece, and we are talking about some certifications that may be already in the pipeline that you're going to be offering not this year, but next year, and so forth. So we want to make sure that we account for the certifications that you plan to offer, and also those that may not be actually developed yet. And again, there are a lot of conversations that will come out of that. As I noted, I think there are some initial, really three reactions to this list once we have it. One is that it will be shorter than some folks like. In other cases, it might be longer than some folks like. You will find things that may be missing. You might find things that should be added. But there will also be a conversation about those certifications, probably from business, that comes around and says, wait a minute, I'm looking at this list and I don't see this, you know, this suite of certifications. And it wasn't even on the list that was on the PER or sent to us. And so this is really an opportunity to actually inform post-secondary and K-12 from an industry perspective so that they understand and you understand kind of like where are the high demand regional certifications that might be available. In some cases, you all have very close relationships with your industry partners. In other instances, we know that's not the case. And so bridging that gap of communication and allowing this is to be at least a process for that. I hope you'll see that, yes, this is an accountability piece, an important one, and one I hope that will, you know, allow the state to recognize the good work of districts going forward. But this is also the beginning of a conversation moving forward. And I think that if you leave with one thing about this process, it should be that it's a beginning of a conversation, and one that is not just K-12, it's not just industry or post-secondary. It is really around this kind of growth of a collaborative group that can start to inform these needs going into the future. I'll pause here. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Do you foresee the PER list being the middle? I mean, if it's on the PER list already, we still confident it's going to be the final list?
I would not make that assumption because there are things on the PER list which probably don't meet the PER definition currently. Yes, sir.
So I understand you won't be the person who does this group or so forth. But are there industry people on the group or just us as educators?
For the group who would...
No, we go from the list and then finalize them.
I mean, it's going to be posted for public comment, and the types of communications or meetings that are held would be for all groups, not for just one. I mean, there's going to be an outreach process, and I had a conversation with the communications staff today, and it's something, I don't have that broken out yet, but it's definitely something that we know is going to have to be pretty robust in allowing us to collect information from all three groups, not just industry itself. Yes, sir.
Give us a list of the non-selecting certifications as well, so we know what you have considered and versus being something you consider, right? You know, what's good, what's not good.
So, yeah, two things. I think one is we can publish the comprehensive list that we received, if that's one thing you're asking, and showing against that, which of the ones met this draft rules framework. I just want to emphasize it's not about which ones are good versus not good. I know you didn't mean it like that, but I do want to make sure that folks understand that. This is about, which ones are going to kind of meet this definition as well as, really help you and industry align your efforts going forward. So one thing is that draft rule framework is part of the draft piece. There's a draft list, there's a draft rules framework, and I think that conversation that we're talking about amongst industry, post-secondary, K-12, is going to focus on both of those things. I know folks, the first reaction will be to scan that list and see which one's not on there. I would urge you, more importantly, the list is important, but the list is a draft, is to look at the rules framework that we draft and really start to understand, like, what are the criteria, what's behind this, are these the right criteria, and where do you feel like there might be gaps or things that are missing or just, in your opinion, not going in the right direction.
Is it a consideration or a guideline that every federal cluster will have to be represented with a certification, or will it be some that are not?
That's a good question. I mean, our intent would be to absolutely do that because there are so many different regions in Texas and there are various pieces. So it's not about we're just going to focus on the STEM areas because we have an Austin focus or something like that. This is, and I think it brings up a good kind of anecdote here, which is that there are some on that list that are state certifications. So for example, I'm from the Houston area. There are some specific certifications related to the Houston port, system there that are absolutely leading to jobs. They are not necessarily portable to California, well, maybe they should be, but fundamentally, we want to have a comprehensive list in the same way that it would encompass all of the areas. That said, I mean, it's gonna again go back to that rules framework that we draft. But I think that's a good suggestion. Mm-hmm. Other questions? One thing I will note that since you guys brought it up, which is the PEAMS work. So in order to capture this for year one, we don't have a list, right? It's not like we can say, did you get this, yes or no. So what we are going to be asking you to do, not you, but your PEAMS coordinator, and this is why I want you to make friends with them, buy them things. But it can be small, inexpensive, but cheap in plastic, I don't know. Chocolate, there you go. But fundamentally, once we settle on this kind of initial long list of pieces, there will be all of those listed in the PEAMS drop down for these. So it'll be what you'll be reporting for this year will be anything that's on that comprehensive list, okay? So we're not going to create an abbreviated draft list that we'll have to go back. We want to capture whatever industry-based certifications you delivered in the 2016-17. What's actually applied for accountability will be that other kind of finalized list. So when we talked about collecting that comprehensive list, that's why it's so important, is we want to have that available for you to report against come next summer or early fall. Yes?
So essentially the PER list could be completely different, not completely, but it could be different from this list?
It's a good question. I mean, so I will, yes, it could be. Because, and here's the rationale, and again, this is part of the thinking, but it's not baked in stone, or baked in thought, but fundamentally is that the Perkins List and what industry is looking for are not always moving in the same direction. The Perkins List is a broad list that includes a lot of skills and certifications, but they don't always align to jobs that are of higher wage or higher demand or portability. In some cases, these certifications are, in many cases, created by specific vendors. We get a lot of calls for that. I'm not trying to say they're good or bad. I'm just saying, but I know that one of the things that the tri-agency report is really looking at in the initiative is which of these certifications are portable and lead to the outcomes that we want for students. So that's not the criteria. That's just the thinking that's kind of going on in some of the discussions that will happen. But ideally, over time, you would hope that the Perkins List and this list would somehow be the same. Mm-hmm. Other questions, comments?
How are they going to rate us on the number of certifications?
So that is not a question necessarily for me, but I think one of the things that in looking at other states, because we are looking at other states that are doing this, is there could be a weighting factor depending on the type of certification or how many, those sorts of pieces. I'm not probably the right person to make that judgment, though.
And I can't add much more other than to say the statute says the percentage of students who earn an industry certification. It doesn't say the percentage that earn certain ones or how many different industry certifications are offered. But again, there's still a lot of decision making that needs to be done with Domain 4. So hopefully that's at least a little bit helpful.
And what do you do with these certifications that require them to be 18? And they don't turn 18 until late after June. How do you get that information back?
Okay. Well, Quentin can I think add a little bit more than that, but since I just took the mic from him, I'll start. Remember, it's a lagging indicator. So, the industry certifications that we'll be using for the 17-18 school year aren't the 18 graduates or the 17 graduates. So such a student would have turned 18 by the time we collected that information.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. This is a lagging indicator, and in some cases, when we've talked about this with some of the information task force folks out there, there's a long discussion that's been had about how far open a window you can have to report that certification being earned beyond that. Again, I think these are all open points of conversation, and they have not been decided yet. Other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.